Good afternoon. We're here today with Vicki Davis, who's running for the District 2 seat on the Lincoln Land Community College Board in the April 2nd election. We appreciate you being here today and invite you to provide an opening statement about why you're seeking this office.
I'm Vicki Davis, and I know that this sounds a little corny, but I'm actually running for this office because I truly believe that education unlocks the key to human potential. And unfortunately, higher education is financially out of reach for so many of our young people. And Lincoln Land Community College provides an affordable alternative for the students who want to get a 2-year associate's degree and then go on to get a bachelor's degree, and also for those students who are really interested in a certificate from one of the 25 programs that we offer in workforce development that can lead directly to marketable skills and well-paying jobs. Community colleges provide opportunities that might not otherwise be possible for those members, and I'm a good example of that. My parents could not afford to send me to college, so I went to Lincoln Land for 2 years and got my associate's degree. I enlisted in the Air National Guard to get the scholarship program, and then I went on to earn a bachelor's degree, 2 master's degrees, and a doctorate in education. I would never have had those opportunities had Lincoln Land not existed for me. I want to bring my education and experience to this office so that it remains a premier learning organization that provides an educated workforce for our communities and a strong and vibrant communities now and in the future. I've been an educator all my life, and I'm running for this office because I want to ensure that future generations have the same opportunities to realize their potential that I had.
Okay, great.
Could you describe District 2?
Sure. District 2 is a fairly large area. It encompasses the villages of Riverton and Rochester, the area between those two. It comes up along Clear Lake in Springfield. It goes up to about 11th. It follows the railroad as it goes across up until it hits 6th Street. It goes all the way out to the Chatham exit, but does not include Chatham, and then it curves around and encompasses the communities around the lake that are both in the Springfield School District and also the Rochester School District. So it's a fairly broad, diverse area, and it encompasses everything in between. So it's pretty big, and it's a very, very diverse population.
Well, Lincoln Land comprises all or part of 15 counties. It's the largest community college district in the state in terms of land mass, at least. It's got the main campus here in Springfield, the 4 outreach centers, offers a lot of educational programs for all levels of students, serves more than 14,000 students annually. What do you think the average Lincoln Land Community College District resident doesn't understand about the college that you wish they did?
Well, I think in a lot of cases, people believe that community colleges are lesser educational opportunities, and I'm a good example of why that's not true. Lincoln Land Community College provides affordable alternatives, but it also provides a student ratio that is much greater than what you would get were you to go to a 4-year institution, especially in the first 2 years when you're taking general education courses that are required. When I was at Vanderbilt, some of our courses had 120, 150 students in it, and as a professor, you can't give the kind of attention to 150 students that you can give to a population of 20. I think the average ratio of professor to student is 1 to 19 at Lincoln Land Community College. So when you're writing a paper, the opportunity for you as a professor to provide really quality feedback that's going to help you when you go on to your upper division college is much greater. And the research actually shows that students who graduate from a community college do better when they go on to an upper division college. And some of that is because they're older. I think the average age at the community college here is 27. So they may be a little bit older, more mature. Many of them did not have financial advantages, so they also worked. So a lot of the students also have more readiness to begin with. But it's also because they had more attention in those first 2 years. I think also when you go to a large university, I was an advisor for freshmen, and one of the things that I found was the students were sometimes they lost a lot of confidence because they would go to a large course that was kind of designed to wash out students who were not really great, and then they would lose confidence and not do well the next semester. So we had to do a lot of coaching with those students to let them know that this is not, the fact that you got your first C is not an indication that you are not going to be successful in college. And the community college removes some of that and gives you a little bit more support for your success.
What do you think Lincoln Land does well? Like which programs really shine in your mind?
Well, certainly some of the workforce development programs are really powerful. The technical electronics program, the truck driving programs, and the nursing programs are incredibly strong. I also think that, the agricultural programs at Lincoln Land are also very strong. Agriculture isn't just, running a combine and sitting out, with the animals. Mm-hmm. There is a huge agribusiness component, and of course they had a large influx of money, but they also do a great job with those programs. I think all of their transfer programs are solid. The foundations that you have going into those programs truly can be leveraged when you go on to a 4-year degree.
So in addition to the transfer programs and the workforce development, are there other roles that a community college should be playing in a community?
Yeah, I think the community college also provides continuous learning for adults, things that either enhance your skill sets so that you then are eligible for promotions, or that, give you an opportunity to explore something that you didn't have the opportunity to explore when you were really busy working on the degree that you were seeking. So you have an opportunity to go back into that as a community member and participate in things like, the culinary arts or literature that, you didn't have time for when you were working on your science degree, but you now have a passion for. So it does provide that kind of community outreach. I think it does have a role in ensuring the liaison between businesses and the college. Certainly, organizations look at a development of the workforce when they invest, and so I think there's a partnership that exists there between Lincoln Land Community College and the surrounding cities, and not just Springfield, but the surrounding cities, to help them think about how can we leverage what we do here at Lincoln Land Community College to make businesses invest in this area. So that, I think, is also a vital role, and certainly a role that the trustees are actively involved in.
Talking about that, there's been a pretty big focus here in Sangamon County on economic development the past couple years, starting with a report that the county did, which I actually brought with me because I wanted to read something from it. Are you familiar with the report?
I am not.
Okay. So it was one the county commissioned to kind of look at basically how good the area is at working with each other and attracting businesses. And it talked when it looked at Lincoln Land, it did talk about a lot of the benefits, but it did say that it's apparent from conversations with LLCC and other educational institutions in the region that there is no single point of coordination for regional workforce development activities. And it called for a stronger collaboration between the college and the county's workforce investment board. How would you work to ensure that's happening if you were a board member?
Well, that's actually really why I brought that up. I didn't know the report existed, but I do know it doesn't exist, and I do think that's certainly a role for the board, but I think it's also a role for the leadership of the institution to find ways to make those connections, to spend time looking at what is it that Taylorville needs in order to provide a robust workforce to attract businesses. What's the vision of the leadership in those in those cities, and how can we support their efforts to develop the kind of workforce that they're looking for? If they're wanting to bring in artificial intelligence, are we offering development in that for students? Certainly there's a lot of interest in artificial intelligence and robotics at this point in time. Are we doing that? And I do think that that's part of what the board can do in forming relationships and spending time going out and meeting with the leaders in that in those communities to try to bring that information back and find the best way to support them.
So board members, not just administration.
I think the administration and the board. I mean, the board is a part of the community. We're in those communities. We need to be participating in those communities and working with the leadership there.
Go ahead.
Well, so other than attending and graduating from Lincoln Land, have you had kind of a continuing relationship? How's that? You seem knowledgeable about the...
Well, I've always stayed connected, even though I was working in Nashville. I was, teaching at Vanderbilt, so I didn't live here for a great number of years. I was in the Illinois Air National Guard, and my young people who worked for me in the Illinois Air National Guard were attending Lincoln Land Community College. So, of course, I was interested in what Lincoln Land was offering and how it continued. I have met a few times with the with the president of Lincoln Land to talk about what are the issues, what are you seeing, because I was in higher education. So, we could connect across some of those issues that she was seeing that
Sure.
I was seeing. So I've stayed connected. My niece is there now. My nephew attended Lincoln Land Community College. My brother attended Lincoln Land Community College. So we've been connected across the
So is there a
years.
particular issue or interest that's kind of driven your interest in seeking a seat on the board?
Yeah, certainly I am an educator, so I'm interested in being on the board for those kinds of things that are about students' success. And I know that at community colleges, a great number of students don't have the readiness level to be successful right away. And as a result, they end up having to take developmental courses. The problem with the developmental courses is really twofold. It makes them feel less confident because they are arriving in college without the skill sets that they're being told they're going to need to succeed. And because of that, it makes them less successful. All the research actually shows also that the students who take developmental courses are less likely to graduate. And students who graduate have higher earning potential for the rest of their life. So those things that make students more successful are things that I have a lot of interest in. So looking at what can we do to overcome that readiness gap, whether that's outreach to the rural schools or the inner city schools, or whether it's actually looking at the testing for that. Is it truly valid? Does it make a difference? Are we, in fact, putting students in developmental courses thinking they wouldn't be successful, and they perhaps could have been? So looking at the research around that, those are things that, there's skill sets that I bring that I also have a passion about. I also have a passion, and probably because I was a freshman advisor at Vanderbilt, I have a passion for those students who arrive and they're not sure who they are. What are their talents, and finding ways to provide students with insight into themselves, to help them think about what are the talents you have, what are the joys that you have, and how can those be used to facilitate a career. And one of the problems that every university has is finding funds for those kinds of things. You can usually find funds for a program. You can find grants for programs in specific fields, like, I'm sure there will be grants for artificial intelligence. But finding funding, someone who wants to put their name on a robust counseling center isn't quite as easy. So finding ways that we can leverage our community, leverage people like me sitting out in the community with that kind of experience to help students find themselves, it saves them money in courses that they take that they ultimately don't need for the degree that they end up in, but it also helps support them in developing into the potential that they all have.
Right. One of the things that you talked early on about how diverse the district that you hope to represent is. There was a recent article in Governing Magazine about some of the racial divides in Midwestern cities, and focused especially on downstate Springfield, Peoria, and Danville. Any suggestions from that? Any issues, any concerns from that would...
Well, I do think that is a factor. We do see that separation on campuses. We saw it in Nashville. You see it when you go out to Lincoln Land Community College and you see students that are, truly not mixing and that have some misunderstandings about each other. I mean, at the core, we're all human beings who have goals and dreams that we all want to seek, and the judgments that we make about each other truly come from a lack of understanding and a lack of knowledge. And when you bring people together, you kind of break those down, and you discover that this person actually feels exactly the same way that I do, and wants the same kind of things that I do. So finding ways to bring students together is an important aspect of that.
And your position on the board could help how?
Well, I think that really the position on the board would be about helping just guide the vision. I know that Dr. Warren has a very powerful vision for the university, and it's about, or for the college, and it's about finding ways for board members to support her, either through seeking funding for activities or going out and networking with the community to find people who can, in fact, come in and help facilitate those kinds of activities. But it is a serious issue, and the divide is much greater, and you will find that in our rural areas that don't mix with our cities. And, you know, it is an important factor.
You talked a little bit about, making sure you're working with the districts regarding developmental courses and their readiness. How would you categorize the relationship Lincoln Land has with the school districts within its boundaries?
Well, I think that for some of the schools, there's a really close relationship. There are some of the schools that are now offering college and high school courses, and they, those students are taking either online courses or coming out to the college to take those courses. And so some of those relationships are very strong, and some of them are not well developed at all. So, as somebody who's coming in, I am a data-driven decision process person. I taught that at Vanderbilt. I would want to take a look at that and say, where do we really need to focus? Which ones of these communities do we need to build relationships in? How can we build relationships? In speaking with the president, in many cases, the rural schools don't have people inside the school itself with the credentials to support the kind of programs that, say, Rochester is now offering. So finding ways to overcome that would also be something that the board could do through its networking and through its interactions with the administration. The alumni associations are great ways to connect with that.
Let's talk about the budget. It's going to be an issue that as board members you would address. How would you as a board member approach the annual budgeting process? Like, what priorities and principles would guide you?
Well, again, like I said, I am a data-driven decision person. So I would take a look at what is the vision, what are the most important priorities that exist at this time. Why are these the most important priorities? How are those going to provide a return on investment for the stakeholders? And by that I primarily mean students. The budget needs to support outcomes for students in one way or another. And so looking at how those investments are being made would in fact always be driven by how is it supporting the students. And so looking deeply at that. There are also the other issues that you have to look at. Grants often are very specific about how that money is being spent. And as board members, it's important for you to ensure that the college is spending that money in the way that the grant intended it to be spent. So that's also a factor that would have to be considered.
The upcoming board meeting, the contract for Lincoln Land faculty is up for approval. If you were on the board, how would you work to find that balance between ensuring the college offers competitive salaries to attract the best educators it can with being a responsible steward of taxpayer dollars?
Yeah, again, you would have to do research. I would have to look at what makes the most sense. And, Lincoln Land it is one of the premier community colleges in the state. And part of that is because it does offer a appropriate salary for its faculty members. So being able to balance that, working with the union organizations and also looking at what's best for the students, how that would support student outcomes, I think would be certainly the balancing point. But I think it's about understanding. It's about understanding what are the key issues that we have to deal with and what are the issues that the educators are actually looking at. Of course, I was a professor, so I have some insight into the process. But I think it's about understanding and listening And unfortunately, a lot of times that's not what happens. I would say that I think that both the administration and the board, the current board members, do a really good job of that.
Okay. There's a couple constraints on the budget that are necessarily, let's say they're forced onto the board or the school, the college by the legislature, such as they recently increased the minimum wage. It will have to be $15 an hour by 2025. What effect do you think that could have on the college and the board?
Well, I think it will have an effect. I think that, there are positions out there that certainly will now cost more for us to support those positions, and so it will take a lot of creativity to take a look at that. I have a background in organizational development, and I do think that's one of the skill sets that I bring to the board that would be useful here, because what you look for in organizational development is leverage. You go in, you do the analysis, you look for the leverage point where you can get the most outcome and with the least investment. In the military, the most bang for your buck. And I think that in all cases, we would need to do that. We would need to take a look at how can we best use these resources to achieve the greatest outcomes. And that's what I've done as an organizational development consultant. It's what I've done it's what I taught my students when I was teaching organizational development processes as well.
I guess the other funding issue that comes to my mind is pensions for the retired staff. It's an issue in Illinois, in higher education. If you were elected to this board, what types of pension reforms would you advocate the General Assembly to undertake, with adding the caveat there's only really so much a local board can do. It's a lot of the General Assembly.
Yeah, I was going to say there's not a lot that as a board member I would be able to do to affect the pension across the state. I certainly would advocate for ensuring that we are providing a pension for the people who have invested their lives and dedicated their lives to the service of the institution. If you've spent your life working and dedicating yourself to the college, you do deserve a pension. I think I would be advocating for ensuring that we're funding that properly, that it has the proper emphasis, and that it's fair, that we're not, it's not bloated, but it's fair.
Okay.
But again, I don't believe there's a lot that I could do with that.
No.
But certainly you can leverage and you can talk and you can, write and you can provide insight for the people who do make that decision.
Okay. You brought up the ag program a little bit ago, and it did receive $18 million last year from a trust to improve that program. It's certainly a huge part of our local economy within the district. What would you like to see happen in the ag department with that type of donation?
I think I'd like to see a couple of things happen there. Certainly they're investing it wisely, and we talked about that when I met with the president a couple of weeks ago, because they're investing in some capital investment, they're building buildings. But what I would really like to see is a lot more public outreach to let people know what's available from the student's perspective. I think when people think ag, they think of, farmers out on a tractor, and it is a huge business, and there are people who don't live on farms who would be able to find really meaningful work in that field. And I think educating people about that. What is agribusiness, and where are the positions that you might seek if you have a certificate or go on to get a degree in agribusiness. So I think I would like to see us spend more time really truly communicating that to the general public. There's a lot of discussion within, it's kind of like a lot of preaching to the choir, but I think we need to actually get more of the congregation involved in that discussion.
You brought up the capital aspect of it. My understanding is they're looking at spending $7.5 million to construct an agriculture center of excellence.
Correct.
If approved, what would you hope to see in such a building?
Well, I think they've got some simulators. I think I would like to see that kind of involvement.
Okay.
I think I would like to see more displays of things that would encourage students to see the potential that is there. I think a lot of our students are fairly narrow in what they believe. The opportunities are there, and I'd like to see a little bit more of that. But I will be honest, I haven't really dug deeply into, what should be in that building.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really thought much about that.
Okay. We've talked about the student experience a lot. Athletics can be a big part of that for a lot of students in higher education. What role should athletics play at Lincoln Land And are the opportunities there now for that to happen?
Well, I think there are opportunities there. Many of the students will come in, and one of the young people that graduated with my niece, for example, was going into Lincoln Land on a scholarship for sports. I think athletics is an important aspect of universities and colleges. I think less so perhaps in a community college than at a four-year institution. But I think there is an opportunity to connect more people in our community to the athletic programs at Lincoln Land, and to provide those kinds of opportunities for students who would certainly not be marketable. Their skill sets would not be marketable to a four-year institution. They're probably not going to get a scholarship to the University of Illinois, but they could get an athletic scholarship and continue their passion and love for that at a community college like Lincoln Land. I think they do connect those students. Mm-hmm. One of the things that we had at Vanderbilt, the students who came to Vanderbilt, and we had a lot of the athletes in our programs, but what we were helping them see was you're probably not going to get an NFL opportunity, but your scholarship, your athletic scholarship, provides you with an opportunity to develop a workplace skill set, a career skill set. And that's what athletics can provide for many students, is an opportunity then to go on to something else in their careers and not be stuck.
I think one of the challenges that Lincoln Land and other community colleges face, especially today, is a lot of students work, so they drive in, take maybe a class or two in the morning, drive to their job, and then come back for a late afternoon or early evening class, and then so there's not much of a community feel at the college. Any thoughts about that?
Yeah, that's true. I went to Lincoln Land Community College, and I worked the entire time that I was there. I was very fortunate in that I had a job that worked Tuesday through Saturday and late on Wednesday and Friday, so I could go full-time from 8 to 12, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so I could carry a full load while I was also working. So I understand that dynamic. It does make it very difficult for you to get people to feel like they're part of that community. And finding ways to do that, I think, in the classroom is probably the best place for that to happen. Having small group activities where you work with other members of your class in the classroom is going to be the way that you can connect those students. Because I know that for myself, when I finished, I had to go because I couldn't hang around and have lunch with my classmates because I had to go to work. But I could come back and work with my classmates on group projects. And I also find that group projects like that, you learn things about each other that you would have otherwise missed. And because, we're in class and we're listening to the professor. So finding those kinds of activities, and I know they're doing those now. My niece has made a great number of friends. She drives in, she takes classes, and she goes home. But she's made a great number of friends through her classroom encounters, the work projects that she's had to put together in class for her grades. Those things have all helped connect her. And I think that's something that a lot of traditional faculty members are not very aware of how important that is. It's not so much just about what they're learning in that process, but it's also about what they're developing for the future. The skill sets of building a team and also the skill sets of working with people who come from different areas.
Okay. I'm a journalist, so I like transparency. It's on and I know you're not on the board, but it's on the webpage for the trustees. And there's no way to contact trustees right now. If you were elected, how would you make yourself available to the people you represent so they could contact you to weigh in on an issue, should they so choose? I
would actually think that there should be a community email box that people can in fact send that to, and that the board members all have access to. That I know that a lot of times people are afraid to put that out there because they don't want people to be angry at them at home or bother them while they're trying to raise their families. But having access to a communal shared inbox was something I was surprised didn't exist. I mean, yeah. I work in the Office of Rapid Results for the state. It's the continuous improvement program for the state of Illinois, and we have a Rapid Results inbox, and everyone can get into that inbox and see what people are sending to us from all the different agencies across the state. I would think that that would be the one way that we could do that to ensure that people can reach us, but that also that we're not then bombarded with people in our homes that,
Sure.
wouldn't be invading our family time.
Got it. Okay. Do you have any?
No, I'm good.
Okay, well, we thank you for meeting with us today, Vicki, and invite you to give a brief closing statement as to why voters should choose you on Election Day.
Why should you vote for me? I believe that I have a great deal to offer the community. My experience, my education, both align with the mission of this office. My skills in organizational development would help ensure that we leverage the limited resources for the best outcomes that we can achieve. But most importantly, I'm an educator with a passion for learning and for higher education. I understand the issues of higher education from the inside. Lincoln Land Community College made a big difference for me, and I want to make sure that I can help other people achieve their goals as well. This is an office for which I believe I can really make a difference for future generations, and I'm excited about the opportunity to do that. I want to ensure that all the students out there have the same opportunity to realize their potential and to become all that they can be, and I'm going to work tirelessly to ensure that that happens.